She was just a simple bookstore girl with a secret. He was a billionaire heir hiding a heart full of love. For years, they were best friends, nothing more. Until one rainy night, she asked him to take her virginity. What started as one night turned into something neither of them expected. But when love gets real, so do the fears. She ran. He broke. But love has a way of fighting back. This is not just a love story. It's a story about trust, class, courage, and breaking every rule to find your heart's truth. Get ready for a journey full of romance, suspense, and a lesson that will change the way you see love forever. Emily Carter had always lived a life on the quiet side. Her days began with the smell of paperbacks and coffee at the quaint Portland bookstore where she worked, and ended with soft music and unread love letters she'd written but never sent. She wasn't flashy or loud, but there was a glow in her simplicity that made people feel something they couldn't name. She was the kind of beautiful that whispered rather than shouted, freckles like stardust across her nose, wavy chestnut hair often pulled into a messy bun, and those green eyes that looked like they'd seen 1,000 sunsets and stored them all. And then there was Nathan Hale, the golden boy, the billionaire's son, but more importantly, her best friend since the age of 10. They had met on a rainy summer day. Nathan's father had just bought a massive estate outside the city, and Emily had been playing in the woods behind her small house when she stumbled into Nathan, muddy, lost, and crying because he hated everything about this new, rich life. She offered him a peanut butter sandwich, and he offered her his first real smile in weeks. That's how it started. While Nathan's life was filled with flashing cameras, board meetings, and designer suits, Emily was his escape. She was the only one who didn't treat him like a brand. She didn't care about his money. She cared about his mind, his heart, his soul. They'd spend nights on her porch swing talking about the universe, about fears and dreams. She knew he hated champagne but loved root beer floats. He knew she wrote poetry but never showed it to anyone. They knew everything, except the things they never said. Emily never told Nathan that she had never been with anyone, not because she was waiting for marriage, not because she was scared, but because her heart had always quietly, stubbornly, painfully belonged to him. There were moments over the years, fleeting touches, lingering stares, words almost spoken, where she wondered if he felt it too. But then he'd pull away, laugh it off. Or worse, date someone else, always someone glamorous, shallow, temporary. Still, he always came back to Emily. She was his constant, and for her, that was both a blessing and a curse. He saw her as safe, reliable, pure. She wanted him to see her as something more. Late at night, lying in her tiny bedroom with the bookstore scent still clinging to her clothes, she'd let herself wonder, what if he kissed me? What if he looked at me the way I look at him? But those thoughts were like stolen candy, sweet, forbidden, and destined to disappear. Then came that night. They had spent the evening like they always did, curled up on his leather couch in the penthouse he claimed he hated. A black and white movie played in the background, forgotten. Emily wore his hoodie. Nathan smelled like cedar and safety. Something was different. He had leaned closer, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers brushed hers, and instead of pulling back, he held on. The electricity was unbearable. Her heart thudded in her chest like a trapped bird. She couldn't take it anymore. She turned to him, her voice barely above a whisper, and said, "Nathan, can I ask you something crazy?" He smiled lazily, unaware of the earthquake about to come. Always. She took a breath, her throat burned. Her world tilted. "Will you be the one to take my virginity?" Silence fell like snow. Thick, heavy, slow. His smile vanished. His eyes searched hers, wide and stunned. Not mocking, not angry, just stunned. And in that silence, Emily felt her entire world teeter on the edge of a cliff. Would he laugh? Would he say no? Would he walk away? She didn't know. But what she didn't realize, what she couldn't see, was that in that moment something deep inside Nathan cracked open too, and nothing would ever be the same again. The rain fell like whispers against the glass of Nathan's penthouse windows, a gentle rhythm that filled the silence of the night. Portland was blanketed in silver mist, streetlights casting golden halos over wet pavement. It was a quiet kind of evening, one where the world felt paused, as if waiting for something important to happen. Emily stood at the elevator doors for a long moment before pressing the button. Her heart pounded like a drum against her ribs. She had been to Nathan's place 100 times, but tonight felt different. Her fingers curled inside the sleeves of her oversized hoodie, his hoodie, actually, one she had borrowed months ago and never returned. She wore simple jeans, no makeup, and her hair was pulled into a messy knot. There was no seduction in her appearance. Only honesty. Nathan opened the door before she could even knock. He was barefoot, in dark joggers and a fitted white tee, hair tousled like he'd been running his hands through it all night. His expression lit up at the sight of her, but faltered slightly when he caught the storm behind her eyes. "Em?" he asked gently, stepping aside. "Is everything okay?" She nodded, stepping in. "Yeah, I just needed to see you." He took her coat, tossed it over a chair, and poured her a glass of wine without asking. He always knew what she needed before she did. They sat on opposite ends of the leather sectional, the tension between them thick enough to touch. Outside, the city lights twinkled like distant stars. Inside, Emily's mind was screaming. "Say it! Say it now. Just say it." She took a deep breath, stared at the rim of her glass, then looked up. "Nathan!" He turned, his brows lifting slightly. She swallowed hard. Her lips trembled. "Will you take my virginity?" The words hung in the air like a dropped chandelier, sharp, shattering, impossible to ignore. Nathan's entire body froze. His breath hitched. His fingers tightened around the stem of his glass. He blinked as if trying to process if he'd heard her right. "What?" he asked softly. Not because he was offended, but because it felt like a moment too fragile to mishear. She forced a nervous smile even as her heart thudded in her ears. "I'm serious." He leaned forward, searching her face. "Why me, Em?" he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. She didn't look away. "Because I trust you. I always have. You've always made me feel safe. And," she hesitated, "because I want my first time to be with someone who actually cares about me." He looked like he was breathing through a storm, jaw clenched, eyes haunted. "You don't think that would change things between us?" Her voice cracked. "It already has." Silence again, not cold, just heavy. Nathan stood up, walked to the window, and stared out at the rain for what felt like hours. Emily could see the muscles in his back tense. She could feel the war inside him, the tug between desire and fear, love and restraint. Finally, he turned, eyes darker than she'd ever seen them. He walked back slowly and sat beside her. Not across the room, but right beside her. His knee brushed hers. His hand found hers, cold and shaking. "Are you sure?" he asked, not with lust, but reverence, like she was offering him something sacred. She nodded, tears glistening but not falling. "I've been sure for a long time." He studied her face like a map he didn't want to get lost in. Then he reached up and gently cupped her cheek. His thumb brushed the corner of her mouth, then her jaw, like he was memorizing every inch of her. His touch was soft, softer than she expected. Then he whispered, "Okay, not rushed, not hungry, just okay." He stood again, offered his hand. She took it. No dramatic music, no wild passion, just two souls stepping into a moment neither would ever forget. Nathan led her to the bedroom, slowly, like a man leading someone into the center of a memory he wanted to last forever. The city lights cast soft shadows on the walls as he kissed her forehead, then her cheek, then the corner of her mouth, as if asking permission at every step. And when their lips finally met, it wasn't like fireworks. It was like coming home. Her hoodie slipped off her shoulders. His shirt joined it on the floor. But nothing about it was rushed. It was quiet, sacred, and filled with emotion that neither of them dared to speak out loud just yet. As they lay together, wrapped in the warmth of shared breaths and trembling hearts, there were no labels, no pressure, no fear, only love, waiting patiently in the silence. And in that moment, everything changed. The world outside was fast asleep. But in that high-rise bedroom above the city, time moved differently. It slowed, stretched, softened. Emily lay still in the dark, her heart pounding even though the storm inside her had passed hours ago. The sheets wrapped around her like fragile promises, and the warmth of Nathan beside her felt too real to be just physical. His arm rested loosely around her waist, fingertips brushing her skin like he didn't want to let go even in sleep. His breath was steady, deep, calming, but even in slumber, he was facing her, holding her. She stared at the ceiling, eyes wide open. What had they done? No, not what. She knew exactly what had happened. The real question was, what did it mean? She had expected to feel different, awkward, maybe even a little broken. Instead, she felt like something inside her had been sewn back together. She could still feel his lips on her skin, not in flashes of lust, but in lingering echoes of care. The way he whispered her name like it was made of silk. The way he looked at her like she wasn't just a body, she was his safe place, his secret, his center. And it terrified her, because she had never imagined that he'd treat her like she was more than a moment. Nathan stirred beside her, his hand pulling her a little closer as if he could sense her leaving, if only in thought. He murmured something into the back of her neck, unintelligible and sleepy, but it made her throat tighten. She waited until his breathing deepened again, then gently lifted the sheets. Tiptoeing from the bed, her bare feet touched the cool hardwood floor, grounding her back in the real world. She reached for her hoodie. But before she could slip it on, a voice, deep, raspy, and wide awake, cut through the dark. "You can't just walk out like that, Em." She froze. His voice wasn't teasing. It was raw, honest, stripped bare. She turned, clutching the hoodie to her chest like a shield. "I didn't want to wake you." Nathan sat up, the sheets falling around his waist, his hair messy and eyes still heavy from sleep, but entirely focused on her. "You didn't answer me." She swallowed. "Answer what?" He stood slowly, walked toward her with deliberate steps. He wasn't angry. He wasn't demanding. He just looked like a man who had waited years for a truth. "Was that just one night for you?" She couldn't meet his gaze. "Wasn't it supposed to be?" Nathan reached her and gently took her hands. The hoodie fell to the floor between them. "Em," he said quietly, "you asked me to take something sacred, something you never gave anyone else. Did you think I could just walk away after that like it was casual?" Her voice cracked. "I didn't want to trap you. You. You have a whole world I don't belong in." He touched her chin, lifting her face until her eyes met his. "Then maybe I want out of that world. Maybe I've always wanted you." Tears welled up before she could stop them. "Don't say that unless you mean it." "I wouldn't be standing here if I didn't." His thumb wiped a tear from her cheek. "Last night wasn't just sex. It was everything I've been afraid to admit." She stared at him, confused, overwhelmed, and aching. "Nathan, are you saying you love me?" He smiled softly, eyes shimmering. "No. I'm saying I've been in love with you for a long time. I was just too stupid or too scared to realize it." Her legs almost gave out beneath her. He caught her, pulled her into his arms, held her like she was something fragile and precious. "I thought if I kept you as just a friend, I wouldn't lose you," he whispered into her hair. "But now I know. I'll lose you if I don't fight for more." Emily clung to him, breathless. He kissed her again, slower than before, without urgency. It wasn't about claiming her, it was about reassuring her, telling her with his lips what his words were only just beginning to say. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. This is real." When morning came, they were still wrapped around each other. Sunlight spilled through the curtains like a blessing. The rain had stopped. A new day had begun, one that no longer belonged to just friends, but to something bigger, scarier, and infinitely more beautiful. Love that had waited years to finally be seen. Emily thought she could handle it. Thought one night of love, even if it changed everything, wouldn't unravel her entire world. But the truth was, she was already traveling. The morning after should have been peaceful, romantic, beautiful. Instead, it was terrifying. Lying beside Nathan, wrapped in his warmth, she felt like she didn't belong in his arms. Not because she didn't want to, but because his world was light years away from hers. He was legacy, spotlight, pressure. She was paperbacks, quiet nights, and secondhand cardigans. So she panicked. That same afternoon, while Nathan was on a call in another room, she left without saying goodbye. No note, no explanation, just gone. She ignored the first few texts. Then the calls. Then the knock at her apartment door 2 nights later. She hid behind the curtain, hand clutched over her mouth, watching him stand outside for 10 minutes in the rain. He didn't leave right away. But when he finally did, she collapsed to the floor in tears. Because leaving him was breaking her more than she thought possible. But how could she stay? She knew what would come next. Cameras, headlines. Billionaire Nathan Hale dating bookstore girl. The internet would eat her alive. She moved back into her childhood home, a quiet cottage an hour outside the city. Her parents didn't ask questions. Her mom simply hugged her tighter than usual and stocked the pantry with all of Emily's childhood favorites. Days passed like shadows, long, silent, hollow. She went for walks through old trails, read books she couldn't focus on, avoided her phone like it was poison. But the worst part wasn't the silence. It was the ghost of Nathan everywhere she went. She saw him in the way coffee steamed in her mug, in the songs they used to dance to in the kitchen, in the hoodie she still slept in because it smelled like him. She missed the sound of his laugh when she teased him, missed the way he looked at her like she was the only thing in the room worth noticing. And still, she stayed away. Meanwhile, Nathan wasn't doing any better. His assistant said he hadn't shown up for 2 important meetings. His board members were whispering about his erratic behavior. Stockholders were uneasy. One even suggested Nathan step down temporarily to refocus. He didn't care. He sat in his penthouse, staring at the empty spot on the couch where she used to sit, wine glass in hand, hoodie draped around her knees. He hadn't been the same since she left. He didn't care about market trends or tech launches. She had become the center of his world, and now that world was gone. Tabloids started sniffing around. Where is Nathan Hale hiding? Mystery woman spotted leaving his building weeks ago. Romance gone wrong. He threw his phone across the room one night after reading a gossip headline that called her an opportunist. They didn't know her. They didn't know the way she gave without asking, the way she loved him before he even realized he needed to be loved. She wasn't trying to take anything. She had only ever wanted to give. And now he'd lost her. He told himself he'd wait, that maybe she just needed space. But as the weeks passed, hope began to wither inside him. The most powerful man in Portland had been brought to his knees, not by a business rival or a market crash, but by love. A love he almost had. A love he wasn't ready to let go of. And Emily, miles away, curled up in her childhood bed, stared at her phone through tear-filled eyes. Her finger hovered over his name in her contacts. She typed a message. I miss you. Then deleted it. She wasn't ready. Not yet. But neither of them realized. Love doesn't give up that easily. The bookstore had always been Emily's safe space. Soft music playing in the background, the familiar scent of old pages and freshly brewed coffee wrapping around her like a comfort blanket. It was a cold Tuesday morning. Quiet, gray skies above Portland pressing low against the windows. She opened the store like she always did, turning on the lights, flipping the sign to open, and pushing her hair up in a lazy bun. She expected another day of organizing books and making tea. She did not expect to find Nathan Hale sitting on the floor between the poetry shelves. Her breath caught in her throat. There he was, legs crossed, back leaning against the bottom shelf, a copy of Pablo Neruda resting on his knee like he belonged there. He looked tired, but not broken. Still the man she loved, but softer somehow. Like someone who'd gone to war and finally found his way home. He didn't look up at first, just turned the page slowly like he hadn't just shattered her quiet world with his presence. Then finally his voice filled the silence. I've read every love poem in this store. He looked up and smiled, soft, sad, still somehow Nathan. None of them hurt as bad as you leaving me. Emily froze where she stood, books still clutched to her chest, heart pounding like it wanted out. Her lips parted, but no sound came. He stood slowly, carefully, placing the book back in its spot. "I thought you'd be here eventually. I waited. I hoped." She blinked, tears already stinging her eyes. "Nathan," she breathed. Her throat tightened. "I thought I wasn't good enough. I thought I didn't belong in your world." His expression crumbled, and in 3 quick steps he closed the space between them. His hands reached up to cup her face, warm, steady, trembling just slightly. "I don't care about my world," he said, eyes locked with hers. "I care about you." Her tears spilled over. "But I'm no one. You're—" "Stop." His voice was gentle but firm. "If you think we're too different because of money or status or what people think, then you don't see what I see." She let out a breathless sob. "What do you see?" He pulled her closer, foreheads touching, his hands sliding down to her waist. "I see the girl who gave me her last piece of gum when we were 10, who stayed up all night when I had panic attacks in college. The girl who never asked me for a damn thing but gave me everything anyway. I see the only person who makes me feel real in a world where everything is fake." She was crying now, full, broken, beautiful tears. "I see my home," he whispered. And then, without asking, without hesitation, he kissed her. Right there between the poetry shelves. It wasn't neat or practiced. It was messy, tearful, deep, honest. The kind of kiss that unraveled months of pain and stitched everything back together in one perfect moment. Customers walked in and quietly walked out. The barista behind the counter just smiled and went back to steaming milk. The world kept turning. But for Nathan and Emily, time paused. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless and wide-eyed, he rested his forehead against hers. "I didn't come here to convince you to love me," he said. "I came because I never stopped loving you, and I couldn't go another day without telling you that." Emily laughed through her tears. "You're such a sap. Only for you." She looked up at him, heart finally steady. "Okay," she whispered. He raised an eyebrow. "Okay? Okay, I'll stop running. Okay, I'll try. Okay, I love you too." He smiled, really smiled, for the first time in months, and then he pulled her into another kiss. No headlines, no cameras, no expectations. Just 2 people finally choosing each other out loud and forever. Love didn't fix everything overnight. It wasn't magic. It wasn't a movie ending. But it was real, and that made it more powerful than either of them could have imagined. After that tearful kiss in the bookstore, Nathan and Emily made a promise, not just to stay together, but to do the work. They went to therapy, not because they were broken, but because they wanted to understand the fears that nearly destroyed them. They unpacked Emily's anxiety about wealth and public judgment. They explored Nathan's deep-rooted fear of losing the only person who had ever seen him for who he was, not what he owned. They learned how to fight for each other, not against each other. They took weekends away. No headlines, no parties, no assistants, just hiking trails, late-night pancakes, and shared laughter under string lights. He read her favorite novels. She learned the names of his board members. They rebuilt from the inside out, and slowly, quietly, their love became unshakable. But one night changed everything again, this time for the world beyond them. It was a panel event in Seattle. Nathan had been invited to speak about the evolution of tech and leadership, but instead, when he stepped onto the stage, he went off script. "What good is power," he said, "if you're too scared to use it to change something that's broken?" The crowd went silent. He continued, "I almost lost the love of my life because we live in a world that tells us we have to fit in boxes, by class, by race, by background. We assume some people are too much and others are not enough. But love doesn't care about any of that, and neither should we." The next morning, Nathan announced the launch of the Carter Hale Foundation, named not just after himself, but after Emily, who had taught him what love without ego, wealth, or status looked like. The foundation's mission was simple but bold: to promote and protect love in all its forms. They offered grants for interracial and cross-class couples facing societal pushback. They organized panels on prejudice in dating culture. They partnered with LGBTQ+ organizations and rural support groups. And most importantly, they told stories, real stories, of love beating the odds. Emily, now his wife and co-founder, told their story 1,000 times over the next few years, to high schoolers and senators, to young girls who thought they weren't enough, and to men in power who didn't know how to be vulnerable. She spoke about fear, about self-doubt, and about how the man everyone thought had everything only became whole when he found love with a girl who shelved books and made grilled cheese sandwiches like it was a sacred ritual. One moment in particular went viral. It was a live interview. A reporter leaned forward and asked skeptically, "Nathan, with all due respect, why her? Why not someone from your world?" He didn't flinch. He smiled slowly, looked right into the camera, and said, "Because she was the only one who saw the real me and loved me anyway." The internet exploded, but more than that, hearts changed. Suddenly, people weren't just watching their story. They were looking inward, questioning the walls they'd built around love, asking, who have I ignored because I thought they weren't my type? Who have I judged based on where they came from? The Foundation's message spread, and so did hope. Nathan and Emily never claimed to be perfect. They didn't try to be. They still argued about what color to paint the kitchen. She still teased him about being a workaholic. He still stole her socks. But they loved, and they chose each other, again and again. Every anniversary, Nathan brought her the same thing, a copy of the first poetry book he read in her store. Inside the cover, he'd write a note, a new one every year. The first note simply said, "Thank you for being my first real truth." Years later, the note said, "We didn't just fall in love. We rewrote what love means." And they did. Together, they became a symbol, not of fairy tale romance, but of what's possible when two people dare to love beyond expectation, beyond class, beyond fear, beyond borders. Because in the end, love isn't about where you come from. It's about where you're willing to go together.